Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Wired Differently podcast with me, your host, Mike Bedford. And I'm really pleased tonight for this episode to welcome to the podcast Melanie Francis. Hello, Mel.
Hello. Give me my full name. I love it.
Well, we might shorten it to Mel as we go through this, but yeah, for the sake of our listeners, who some of them might never have heard of you before or met
Yeah.
you before, I have to give you the full and formal introduction
Yes.
on this one. But you're not
Thank
allowed to
you.
call me Michael, though. By the way, it's only Mike. That's my Sunday. No, that's my Sunday name. That's my mum's name. What she calls me, and won't change no matter what.
No, that's it.
But no, it's honestly, well, thanks so much for joining. It's an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on the podcast, and I know that we've
It-
been trying to do this for a while, haven't we?
Yes, really. Honestly, I think it's just so nice that we're going to get to chat together on your podcast because we've
That's
been
it.
meaning to do this for so long. So it's great that we've made it happen.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I know we finally got to
Okay.
catch up in person, didn't we?
Yes.
A conference not long
Yeah.
ago, but you know what it's like. You've been pulled in a million different directions, so you never
Yeah.
really kind of get a chance to sit down and have like a proper brew, so to speak,
That's it.
and a
Yeah. Yeah.
chat. And we were saying, weren't we, just before we jumped in? I mean, a lot of the great content happens before you actually jump on the podcast, actually,
Yeah.
because you
That's
just like,
right.
you're like, no, and you
Yeah.
get on the podcast and you're like, oh God, I wish I'd been recording that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Stop talking. Record.
hey, and when Indians get together, my God, yeah, we can fill a podcast. Don't worry about that one. Listeners, don't worry about this. You're going to have plenty to listen to, I'm sure. It's not really scripted. It's not scripted, isn't this? That's the beauty, I think, of my podcast, and what might make me different to other podcasters. I don't know. That's my wild hypothesis. But basically, I don't have a script. We reach out, we have a chat beforehand. They give you a bit of a broad idea about what we're going to talk about, and then we just come on. And I'd really like to see where the conversation takes us. I mean, we're never going to run out of things to say, but it's essentially two people getting together, having a chat that you don't usually get time to do. I said, I didn't know, Mel, before you jumped on, but selfishly, this is another reason I love doing podcasting, because I can get people who I have got a lot of respect and time for and admire. I can pull them into my studio and get their full attention for like an hour or whatever, and just have them to myself. So, hey, here you are, Mel. Welcome
Perfect.
to
I'm so
the
excited.
podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, so I know we go back a few years, right? We met on online on social media on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And we've kept in touch, haven't we? We follow each other and follow each other's work. I've got a great admiration and respect for your work. I'm a huge fan of what you do. And
Likewise.
no,
Yeah.
it's great, isn't it? And we
It's
both
really
kind of
great.
hang out in that neurodiversity sort of space, and we're gonna dive much deeper into and talk about you, of course, because the whole name of the podcast is the Wired Differently podcast. So perhaps we might explore that a little bit tonight in this podcast. But yeah, for the benefit of listeners, I know you listeners might not, so let me just give you a little bit of an intro and a bit of background for listeners of who you are, Mel, as well. So yeah, Mel Francis, she's the founder of Neuroinclusive HR. She's also a chartered fellow of the CIPD, which, for those who don't know anything about HR, is like the big HR, really important professional body in HR.
Yeah.
She's also recognised as one of HR's magazine's most influential HR practitioners, no less.
Yeah.
So lots of kudos coming into this as well.
Yeah,
But not
that's
only
so
that,
cool.
Mel has got a lot of experience as well, a lot of experience in senior roles, leadership roles, and is also really widely recognised as a leading voice in this space and helping to shape neuro-inclusive workspaces. I mean, we'll talk about neuro-inclusion, I think, a lot during this day. This is the big word now, neuro-inclusion, right? This is the thing.
Yeah.
Now it's moving on, which is great.
Yeah.
The conversation is shifting as well. But
Yeah.
Mel, what you do is, I think it's right to say, you partner with organisations to challenge those traditional approaches to systems, performance, leadership, and inclusion, and help them move beyond awareness now, which is what we're just saying, to really embed those strengths-based practical strategies and tools that can unlock neurodivergent talent and potential.
Yeah.
And your work, I think it's right to say, sits between that intersection of HR, leadership, and neurodiversity. So bringing that fresh, thought-provoking perspective to how we define and support high performance.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a true HR professional at heart, right? And I won't move away from that. So that, the neuro-inclusive HR is absolutely intentional. HR with a neurodiversity specialism. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a HRer. You're a
Yeah,
HRer.
yeah, and I'm proud of
Yeah,
it. You know, when you've worked in it for 30 years, it's
yeah,
that's my profession, right? It's not
yeah, yeah, yeah,
what
yeah,
I love about it is that we have got loads of different threads that we can follow as an HR professional. And,
yeah.
you know, at one stage I followed the employee relations thread, which I think is the thread that runs through all HR roles anyway, and definitely
Mm,
should. And then in the last few years, it's been neurodiversity as a specialism. But still with HR at the absolute core of what I do. Yeah,
yeah.
which is great. I love it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and I think it goes without saying that you're sought after speaker and a podcast guest. And
Yes.
tonight you were telling me earlier, I think this is your fourth one in as many weeks, isn't it?
Yeah,
In
I've done
terms of
quite a few in the
podcasts.
last few weeks. Yeah, which has been great. I love it. I love doing this sort of thing and just continuing to speak about neurodiversity in
Yeah,
workplaces, raising awareness and just helping us all to just talk about it more, you know, rather
yeah.
than pigeonhole it into separate conversations. It should be something we're talking about in normalizing the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think we'll probably get into that as well as we go through this conversation
Yeah.
tonight as well. And I think you're known, I think, for your engaging but yet straight talking style and that
Oh,
ability to turn those complex ideas into that meaningful, practical change as well, which
yeah,
which
good.
I respect a lot as well. Someone
Yeah.
who likes to kind of tell it how it is as well, and who's known for my kind of no fluff sort of approach. It's
Yeah.
grand to have someone else here as well who kind of shares that sort of similar philosophy,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess.
absolutely. I think we can overcomplicate the conversation. Sorry.
100%, and that can get quite confusing, can't it, for a lot of people, particularly people who might need things a bit more direct and a bit less
Yeah,
ambiguous.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when I talk about neurodiversity, and as you say, people say, I really appreciate the way you just explain it really clearly, which is lovely. I love that feedback. But also, it just doesn't need to be complicated,
Mm,
right? The whole, you know, sometimes when we're talking about, you know, the connections in the brain and da 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 da, da, and it's just like, the way I describe neurodiversity is this: we all have a brain, and our brains are all different from one another's.
mm.
Our neuros are diverse, our brains are different, and move on. And you know, when we
One
get
slide,
to
one slide
right,
when you're doing the
that's it.
training session.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Rather than a whole training session around what is neurodiversity. Well, where do I
Exactly.
start? Let's talk about this.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk. Meanwhile, your audience is like, oh
Yeah.
my God, how does this matter
Yeah.
to me? How does this
Yes.
matter to
And
me in kind of what I do and how I help others and how I interact with others and what I'm
absolutely.
frightened of and what that conversation might look like?
Absolutely, which is why, you know, some people might not even start the conversation because it just sounds like it's far too complicated because there's all these terms and words
Yeah,
and
it's
phrases and
complex,
ways that
isn't
I've
it?
got to get my head around things. And it's like, no, 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 don't just one brain is different to the next brain. That's all you need
Yeah,
to know. So how do we then take that in our workplaces and make sure that everyone is able to thrive? What's getting in the way? What
yeah,
can we move out of the way and how can we help everybody to really succeed within different organizations? So yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's where I kind of took my approach to it. And
yeah,
so that's why I don't run sessions on ADHD, on autism, or you know, on the separate
yeah,
conditions. And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not because in no way do I mean to invalidate any particular
No, that's not your lane.
diagnosis or absolutely not. But what I wanted to do was go, let's let's not get too kind of in the swim lanes. Let's talk about our brains. This is all
Yeah,
of us. You know, it's not them.
yeah,
How do we help
yeah,
them get more of them? You know, even today I
yeah.
was on a call and someone was talking about, well, in tech, there's more of them. And I'm like, oh God, can we stop
Not old
stereotyping and just like,
chestnut.
you know, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, helping to understand that I think is really important. This is all of
Yeah,
us.
no, I totally agree, and yeah, I no doubt take a similar approach to yourself in that
Yeah.
respect, and be more focused about well, what practically can we do to make the workplace better, where people can actually just connect and interact and do
Yes.
and get
Yes.
things done.
Yeah.
And
And
it's a bit like
appreciate we're doing that differently.
yeah, yeah, no, totally. And I think just taking your analogy there and putting it out in a different context, it's a bit like, it can be sort of complex that even with the best of will, even us neurodivergent folks don't really understand it completely. I can't say I'm a expert in my own neurodivergence, let
Yeah.
alone everybody else's. I mean, it's just so
Yeah.
complex, and it's such a complex area, isn't it? To where would you even possibly begin to start to explain? I'm glad
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
Absolutely.
it's a bit like
Yeah.
someone kind of, thinking about you stood up on a stage trying to explain all this. It'd be a bit like someone who's an absolute, talk about techies, someone who's an absolute techie expert explaining every minuscule detail about how to write in Python or
Yeah.
something. Most people are just going to be like glazed
Yeah.
over
Right.
like that, aren't they? Like, what
Yeah.
did you just say? Do you know?
Yeah.
And it's a bit like that,
Absolutely.
I guess, with like neurodiversity and
Yeah. Yeah.
neurodivergence, when you kind of but eventually, someone's just going to be like, I've just no idea what they just said. I don't know how that's going to really
Yeah.
make any difference to me back in my life and day job and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. They're switched off. Yeah. No, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Tell me about you then. Tell our listeners, tell us
Yeah.
about you and your wired differently journey. When
Yeah.
how did that start? What did that look like? And when did you realize that perhaps you were wired differently?
So I started with, this is really in relation to my son. So my son was 10, he's now 18. So 8 years ago, he was diagnosed with autistic spectrum condition. But my journey didn't start out with, I think I have an autistic son. My journey started out with, I've got a kid who's really anxious and I need to get him some help. And I think that's lots of parents will kind of recognize that. And so, like many of us, I took him to the GP, and the GP referred him to CAMS, and CAMS could see him in about 18 months' time. And in the meantime, they'd
Mm.
given him some online stuff to do, which, quite frankly, if it wasn't Minecraft related at that stage, he just wasn't interested in.
Not exactly
So,
support at the point of need, shall we say, really.
no. So I was really lucky to, and I mean that, lucky to be able to find and lucky to be able to afford. And there's a real socioeconomic situation brewing around neurodiversity, right? Unnecessarily, but let's get into that, in my
Mm,
opinion.
mm, mm-hmm.
And so I took him to a child psychologist for his assessment for the anxiety. And she said, yeah, high levels of anxiety, but he also has OCD and he's showing some autistic traits. So I was kind of left with this triple whammy of information, not really sure what to do with it. So I was like, oh, I'm a single
What
mum
does that mean?
with one
What do I
child.
do?
And I was like, now what?
Yeah.
And of course, at that stage, my thought process was, well, of course, I have to now go for diagnosis because I didn't think that there was any alternative to that. And now I know very differently. And I wouldn't have pursued a diagnosis if I'd have known what I know now. Anyway, we
Okay.
did go for diagnosis, went through the private route. He was diagnosed with autistic spectrum condition. And then I was like, I don't understand what that is. Like, I don't
Mm,
understand how come he's autistic. He's really different to the kids in his class who are autistic. So what's going on? And that's really where my journey started in my learning. And so I started learning about autism. And then I came across Professor Amanda Kirby and a
mm,
video of her talking about neurodiversity. And I was like, that makes much more sense, rather
mm.
than just one thing. This is about
All
our
like the coloured
brains.
balls and all this
Yeah,
kind
the
of stuff.
balls in the bucket, which is a great
The balls
analogy
in the
that she's
bucket. Yeah.
created. Yeah, which is brilliant. And it still really resonates with, like last week was Neurodiversity Celebration Week. I showed the video a couple of times and people just love it because it's a great way to be able to explain neurodiversity. And then Amanda
Yeah.
and I were speaking. I was HR director at that time and I was trying to get her in to my organization to speak, but we didn't quite manage that, but we kept in touch. And then eventually I went to work with her. So I've just been working with her for the last few years, currently going into an associate role with Do It Solutions. And it's just really great learning from her, but also
Mm,
continuing to speak to organizations about what we do. So my wired differently really is about my son, but also with a great appreciation now of the fact that we are all wired differently.
mm,
So that is where my learning has taken me to, and what I'm keen for
mm,
everybody to start to get to grips with, because I do worry that sometimes we are talking about neurodiversity in such an othering way that we're
mm,
losing sight of, or maybe not even finding sight of, the fact that we are all neurodiverse. We've all got a
mm,
brain.
mm,
So, the sort of focus on at the moment with ADHD and autism diagnoses, for example, it just puts all the spotlight there, and we sort of miss again the fact that we're all coming at things in different ways and different preferences and different ways of being able to navigate the world, so it's just it's been, I love it. It's really fascinating, and I love leaving a session knowing that I've increased awareness for at least a few people. It's really great.
Have you ever thanked your son for helping raise awareness for you
Yeah.
then? They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what, Mike? He said, "Good job, I was diagnosed with autism, Mum. What would you be doing now?" So it's brilliant.
Well, there you go. You see, he's got it sussed out, hasn't he?
He's
He
got
was
me well done.
instrumental in your
Yeah.
career shift and
Totally.
journey.
Yeah.
And isn't that funny?
Yeah.
I wonder what that might
Yeah.
have looked like if that hadn't
Yeah.
have happened. That
Yeah.
sliding doors moment. I guess,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
You were going along in your HR career and whatever,
Yeah.
senior HR leader, and that
Yeah.
happened, and that was quite a
Yeah.
pivotal moment in your journey as well, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Through the
it
lens of
really
obviously
was.
through your son, and then
Yeah.
experiencing that to actually thinking, actually, is this? I recognise this. I recognise that, and
Yeah.
there's that commonality story, isn't there, of
Yeah.
parents
Yes.
finding out themselves through their children.
Yeah.
It's
It
become
really
more
is.
and more of a common story, hasn't it now, in
Yeah,
terms of
absolutely.
later
Yeah.
diagnosed
Yeah.
adults, self-diagnosed or professionally diagnosed,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
that might look like as well. So that's
Which
really
makes
interesting.
perfect sense, right? When you think about it, when I was at school, this wasn't a
Mm,
topic we were talking about. It wasn't
God, no.
something that anybody was diagnosed with. It was, it
No,
just wasn't a thing. And I know sometimes
no.
I'll do that and someone will put their hand up and go, "Excuse me, I think you'll find it was a thing." It's like, no, no, no. When I was at school, it wasn't a thing because the diagnoses had not even been created in the
It really
90s.
wasn't. It really wasn't. I was at school probably, hazard a guess, but probably around of a similar sort of a time as yourself, that kind of that
Right.
generation, kind of
Yeah.
80s, 90s. And no, I'd never even heard of the term neurodivergence. I think probably later, I'd probably very casually heard of ADHD a bit later on.
Okay.
But but actually, when I went through school and stuff like that, there was, no,
None of it.
never
No.
mentioned ever
No.
neurodiversity, neurodivergence. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way. I'm not saying
No,
that's a
but
good thing, 'cause the
it's
language wasn't there,
interesting.
so
Exactly. So it goes back to what you were saying about the generations and parents finding out, because you think 2 generations ago it wasn't a thing. So we've got, and yet the genetics were definitely there. This isn't a whole new
God.
evolution of
We were talking about
humankind.
this. We were talking about this the other day. Me and my wife were having a full-on
Right.
conversation about it. About kind of actually, when you look, as you become more self-aware yourself, you start looking back at your own lineage, don't you? And your own
Yes.
kind of like family tree. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, oh yeah. You start piecing the puzzle together, type thing, don't you? And you realise, like you've just said there, that they said this has been around as long as humans have been.
Absolutely.
It's probably someone
Yeah.
neurodivergent who invented the wheel, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, of course. Of course, right? And this is where I'm trying to help people to understand, this is where the brilliance is sitting, right? You don't get new things or new inventions or creativity just by kind of, all doing the same stuff at the same time. This is about the difference in the ways in which our brains work. And actually, and it comes with it in some regards, because this isn't about us all thinking and doing things in the same way. So I don't know if you watch Traitors, but I love Traitors.
I know it.
Okay. So what happens in Traitors is they all sit around this round table and they all come in with their own idea about who they're going to kind of, accuse of being a traitor. And then what happens is somebody starts the conversation and it veers them all off in a different direction. So by the end, they've all decided that Mike's the traitor, not Mel's the traitor, which is what they all went in to think about. And it's just such a brilliant example of that kind of herd mentality. And for me, it's almost like that. If we think that 1 in 5 of us is neurodivergent, then 2 out of the 10 around the table are neurodivergent, but the other 8 are not. Right. So you get the kind of, well, we'll go with the 8 because that's just the majority. But the 2 are the ones sitting there going, well, no, it's him. I told you it was him. and you're not
Yeah.
listening. And I think that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what's playing out in workplaces constantly. People are being drowned out because the majority are thinking in a different way, or, he's just really difficult. He interrupts me. I don't like the way he communicates with me. Let's ignore him, and
Yeah.
it's that kind of behavior that I think we've got to get to grips with in teams. And
Yeah.
that's where managers, leaders can make such a big difference as well.
How's
It's
that played
difficult.
out for you in your career then? Obviously, being someone who kind of thinks differently and challenges the status quo and maybe don't fit nice and neatly into a little box. How's that played out
Yeah.
for you throughout your career? Have you noticed any friction for yourself in your career journey with that?
Yeah, so interestingly, I don't classify myself as being neurodivergent, but I am one of those people that does speak up. Who doesn't, I don't mind saying how I feel and how, what I feel should be right. So I guess in that way, displaying those kind of characteristics that people find quite tricky. How it's played out for me is, I guess, like lots of people, right? We try to navigate our way through our careers without pissing too many people off on the way. And sometimes I do.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. And especially when I
Yeah.
work in HR, I walk in the room and people go, HR's here. Like, no, 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 my
You're
name's
a rule
Mel.
breaker. You've just
Yeah.
broken the rules now on the podcast. I now have to add a parental explicit
No,
rating thing
I'm
now.
sorry. I didn't realize we were on the BBC.
It's the dynamics of putting things online, dog. It's no longer
Yeah,
child
yeah.
friendly now.
No, you're gonna have to
But
give me
that's
a rating.
absolutely fine. I'm gonna have to R rate, well, for
No,
that.
you have
But
to take it out. But it's that, right? You're just, I'm me. And we're
yeah, yeah, yeah,
all different. So actually, it doesn't matter if I've got a diagnosis or identify as or whatever. The fact is that my brain is working differently to yours.
yeah.
And, this is just how it goes. But what we tend to do is be much more conformist to what we
Yeah.
think some of the expectations around us are. And, I guess my role in HR means I've got to look out for those things, and I do pick up on those
Mm.
things, and I have to speak up about them.
Have you ever
It's
felt
that,
conflicted though in the workplace with that, where you've kind of seen, and we know a lot of
God,
us
yeah.
folks that are wired differently can have quite a strong
Yeah.
sense of social justice as well, can't we? And
Yes. Yeah.
when you've seen, and I guess that's kind of quite a dichotomy being in HR. And as
Yeah.
an HR professional myself, I'm just trying to take myself out of that lens and kind of see how other
Yeah.
people see HR professionals as kind of almost being like the organizational police and enforcing the
Yes.
rules and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what does that look like where that's clashed with you and your systems and your values and your beliefs, and how have you handled that, and how's that played out?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Yeah, it's tricky, and a few times it's kind of led to a bit of conflict, I would say. I'm just trying to, now you've sort of triggered me with a couple of conversations that I've had in my career, and one that, I remember as an HR business partner, I was supporting a particular area of the business, and there was a more senior HR director who was in a different area of the business, but I was I was staying true to the confidentiality of what was going on in my business area, and didn't tell him. He said, "Oh, what's happening with this?" Oh, I think it was a disciplinary or something. And I said,
Mm,
"Oh, we haven't got the outcome yet. I can't tell you." And to this day, which I think is about 20 years later, he still doesn't talk to me because he felt like I should have told him. And I was like, "But that was me maintaining confidentiality around the piece of work that I was doing, which
mm,
was really important to me."
mm,
And actually, as a fellow HR professional, you should know that that's just not something I'm gonna break, right? Because
yeah,
otherwise, it's just flippant and gossipy, and that's just not what I do. So,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
still feel comfortable with the fact that I didn't share that particular confidential piece of information, even though he was a more senior member of the HR team. But it was a real
yeah,
lesson, actually, the
yeah,
way that people's behavior can come towards you, and the way people behave, and the different
mm,
levels of acceptance.
mm,
It's just, yeah, it's tricky sometimes, sort of holding your ground. with
Yeah.
things. And I don't think that's necessarily a neurodivergent, a difference. I think sometimes it's, your values and your
Testing your own.
professionalism,
Yeah.
and not feeling, it's very difficult to pressure me into doing something. I'm quite stubborn.
Yeah.
So, I'm not easily influenced by others, I would say.
Yeah. That might be
So,
a
yeah.
great strength of your wired differently mindset and brain then.
Yeah, yeah. I'll take that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how dynamics and relationships can play out in the workplace, and
Yeah,
how, as someone who thinks about things differently, how you fit in and how you see that and how you interpret that, and how you then
absolutely.
flow within that system or don't flow
Yes.
within that
Yeah.
system.
Yeah. And that can feel really uncomfortable. You
Mm.
can feel like, I'm saying that now as though, yeah, yeah, I just did that. But actually at the time I was like, oh God, maybe I should tell him. And now I feel awful. He doesn't like me and he's obviously bad mouthing me to others. And is that going to be career
And that could
limiting and
trigger
that kind of
lots of
thing?
thoughts, thinking about,
Absolutely.
rejection of
Yes.
dysphoria and all those types of things being triggered. And
Yeah.
what's he saying about
Yeah.
me? Is he saying this? Am I going to get fired? Am I going to get all this kind of stuff going off
Absolutely.
constantly?
Absolutely.
Amplified with
Yeah.
RSD.
Yes. And I think when you're earlier in career, that can be really impactful.
Mm.
And I was quite early in career at that stage, actually. But, I just still stood my ground.
You want
And I
to do
wouldn't
the
think
right thing.
twice about it now. Yeah. But I think I still really worried about the impact that that might have and the influence that he might have over others to enable me to progress. So I think, again, when you're in a leadership position, it's really important that you always stay grounded, right? And
Mm.
even knowing that you don't always get to hear stuff. I remember as a HR director talking to, a CEO and him saying, well, they said over there this is happening. And I'm like, you don't get to hear, right?
Mm.
No one is going to come to you as the most senior person in the business and tell you what's really going on.
Mm.
That's just not what happens. You get to hear what people want you to hear, what your direct reports allow to be funneled up to you. So, which is why I think it's just such a great idea for leaders to stay grounded, be visible, getting out and about and seeing what's really happening within
Mm.
organizations rather than rely on their direct reports telling them. And definitely don't
Mm.
rely on HR telling you because we in HR don't get to know. No one tells us the stuff. People think HR have got all the gossip, but we really haven't because people don't tell us. We're the dangerous people to tell.
Do you think HR attracts people that are wired differently due to the kind of all the different complexities and fast changing elements of the role? Is there a
Yeah,
sense of that HR as a profession might attract people that are wired differently?
that's a really good question. I don't know. I was looking the other day actually, something like 70 something percent of professionals in HR are female. Yeah, it's a
Mm.
very female dominant um a profession, which I find
Mm.
really fascinating because,
Mm.
it's not like everything we do is very sort of nurturing, is it? This is a
Mm.
very strategic and operational profession. I don't know. I don't know whether it's attracting people who are wired differently in
It's
that
got a lot of
way.
moving parts though, hasn't it? I think
Very.
perhaps
Yeah.
that moving kind of parts type thing might be quite
Yeah.
attractive
Yeah.
to a
And
lot of
it's got
people.
lots of different ways you can take it. So like I said at the beginning, that's sort of thread of employee relations. But what I love about it is you can sort of dabble in stuff and go, oh, actually, I'd quite like to do a bit more of that, or I'd like to
Mm.
learn a bit more about that particular area. And then you can find different specialisms that you can really pursue, which is
Mm.
great as a profession. So those wires, if you like, I think are pretty vast in HR as a profession. It's great.
Mm. And I'm going to take you back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier here. And I want to ask you a question about what's lighting you up at the moment in the whole neurodiversity space, and
Yeah.
what's not.
Great. Great question. What's lighting me up and what's not? Personally, what's lighting me up is the sort of thought of are we helping here? With the conversation about neurodiversity, I do worry that it is becoming, again, the sort of othering type conversation, right? And I think what we might be doing is missing the trick of understanding how much talent this is, right? So are we, by talking about neurodiversity in the way that we're talking about it, are we really helping?
Mm.
Because by putting such a spotlight on it, people say to me now, do you think I should disclose? And firstly, I think that whole notion of, do you think I should tell you that I've got this diagnosis or identify as being this? And my
Mm.
answer is always, it depends.
Mm.
And, which is a very HRy answer, I know, but it's what I mean by that is it depends on what who are the organization, what are they saying about neurodiversity, but
Yeah.
who are the leaders in there that are really championing it? Because if it's just on their website as a,
Yeah.
if you've
Drive
got
up
neurodiversity,
protected
come in.
characteristics data.
Right. Yeah. Or it's just a word mentioned in their EDI statement, or,
Yeah.
but there's no evidence of them genuinely
Doing anything.
appreciating. Yeah. Yeah. Doing anything and just getting it. It's
Mm.
just, then because why would you? I wouldn't go in somewhere and say, oh, I've got this particular medical condition
Mm.
that
Mm.
doesn't impact me in any way, shape, or form, other than for people to go, oh, that condition. I
Yeah.
know about that because I've seen a few TikTok videos about it, or everyone's talking about it. That
So how do you
kind of
feel about that then
notion.
when you're at that recruitment stage and
Yeah,
one of the first questions asked is, is there anything you want to tell us? Do you require any additional assistance or anything to be part of this process? What would you say there at that point? Because essentially that's an early kind of prelude to, do you want to disclose, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. So when I'm delivering training on neurodiversity and we talk about that, I say my advice is to reframe that question. Because even what you've just said there, which is, do you need any reasonable adjustments, anything you want to tell us about, just sounds like bear all,
Yeah, tell
tell
us.
us exactly what it is that is wrong with you. It's
Yeah,
that
right.
kind of wording, right? And what
That's a
reasonable
really good
adjustments
way
do
of
you need?
explaining it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound great, does it? So I
No.
encourage organizations to reframe, use different wording, which is something like, we're an inclusive employer, or we are a neuroinclusive employer, even better, obviously.
Mm.
Please tell us what we can do to make this the best possible experience for you,
Hmm.
which is a really different framing.
Yeah, totally.
So if somebody wants to, I don't know, they want to miss the rush hour traffic because they find that really distressing when they're having to,
Hmm.
get
Hmm.
on a busy bus or a busy train or whatever. And then they could come back and say, is it possible for me to have an interview at 11 a.m.? And that's it, right? So there's
Yeah.
nothing, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have to
It's
tell you
removing
anything. I don't
the
have to give a
barrier that is going to
reason.
impact, yeah, your ability to
Absolutely.
succeed.
Absolutely. And then, as the person organising the interviews, you can go, yeah, fine, we've got an 11 a.m. or we've got a 2
Mm.
p.m. or whatever the case may be. Not, I'm neurodivergent, or I've got autism, or I'm
Yeah.
going to find it really, I'm anxious or whatever. Just,
Bare
can
your
I have an
soul.
11 o'clock? Right. Yeah. And then, because then, I'm sorry, but people make instant assumptions about what that means. And that's based on
Yeah, we're all inherently
their
biased,
knowledge.
aren't
Yeah. And also, we're not all as well versed on
we? Mm.
neurodiversity as you and I, Mike.
Yeah.
Some people go, autism. Yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
God,
yeah.
that's tricky.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to look me in the eye and they're going to need headphones.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Or ADHD. Oh, that means he can't sit still. He's not going to be able to pay
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. So it's that. That's why I think we need to, just take the conversation in a different way rather than focusing in on, I've just said ADHD and autism. They're the
Mm.
two
Yeah. The,
conditions that we're speaking
the
about the
big
most,
ballers, the
aren't they?
ballers in the space. No one ever talks about
Absolutely.
my little old condition, dyscalculia, that much.
No,
It's there. It's part of the family, but yeah,
yeah. And actually,
you know.
dyscalculia is far more prevalent than autism,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't know it from the conversations that we're having. You'd think that autism, ADHD are sort of the top ones, but they're not. You've got dyslexia
Yeah.
and developmental language disorder.
I hate trying to explain that to
Yeah.
people what that means. It's
Yeah.
just really tricky, let alone spell it. I hate trying to actually try to explain to someone who's no idea or comprehension of what that is to explain to
Yeah.
it. Don't you think as well that actually it's an exhausting process? I'm going to come back. We're spider webbing a little bit here, but we'll
That's
come
all
back.
right. Yeah, go for it.
It's a really exhausting process for people who are wired differently, having to kind of go through that, explaining over and over and over again
Yes.
about what it is and what I
Yes.
need and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And you just get to a point where you just think, I just can't be asked
Yeah.
doing that
Yeah. Yeah.
anymore with someone.
Yeah.
So you just then shut down, right? And think, I just, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 not again, not again.
No, exactly. And actually, I get it. You know, unless it's absolutely relevant to the kind of job that you're going for, or you have particular struggles that are going to come up frequently that people might need to know about, then why would you say it? You know,
Mm.
you're not going to talk about medical conditions unless it's going to impact you, yeah, and others need to know about it. So,
I think
and I would
you get
put
kind of almost
neurodiversity.
pushed it backed into a bit of a corner though
Yeah,
sometimes with that to actually say I might not I might not want to have that conversation and just say just give me what I need
yeah,
basically so I can thrive. In
exactly.
reality, in
Exactly.
the workplace, that ain't how it kind of plays out, is it? It's like,
No,
you know,
it
you get
isn't.
almost backed into a corner of actually
Yeah,
what I need from you is I need you to tell me that you've got this
yeah,
or
yeah.
you've got that
People
so
want a
then we can
reason.
put in place this or we can put in place
Yes.
that, you know.
Yeah. One of the best, I can't remember the organization, but there was a company who had this policy that you don't have to give a reason for wanting an adjustment. So
Yeah.
you can just say, I want a different keyboard or I need a different chair. And they go, yep, cool.
There's
You
not a
know, they don't
why.
go,
That's it's behind it.
why do you need
Why?
that?
Why?
Yeah.
Why? You know, to everything. It's like, oh my God, I just need it so I can do my job,
Right,
basically.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
know, is it really that an unreasonable thing to kind of say?
yeah,
Actually, if you just give me this tool, I can actually do my job.
yes. Yeah,
Than having
absolutely.
to
I
kind
find
of
it
tell
much
you
easier.
everything about my entire kind of history of
Yeah,
who I am and where I came
exactly.
from and, you know.
Exactly. Because a lot of us, you know, like my glasses are not going to be any good for you, right? Your
Yeah.
prescription for your glasses are going to be really different to mine. So we are all having adjustments, you know, your
Yeah,
chair,
100%.
the light,
It's a
whatever the
universal
case
thing,
may
isn't it? That's
be.
how it's,
But
yeah.
for some reason, we insist when we're talking about neurodiversity, we go, oh, why do you want a sit stand desk?
Yeah.
Oh, you've got this. Okay. But as soon as you
It has
say
to
you've got
correlate
this,
to the
yeah,
condition somehow,
absolutely. But it
you
just
know?
doesn't, right? So you might
No.
have traits that
Yeah,
might fit under the sphere of a particular neurodivergent condition, but you'll
yeah,
never reach the threshold to be diagnosed with it. You know, so back to the
no,
balls in the bucket analogy. You've got
yeah,
lots of balls in the bucket, but not enough to reach the diagnostic threshold, but enough to mean that you need a different chair or you need to work in a different way.
yeah,
So I think
100%.
we are putting too much sort of correlation between neurodivergent condition equals having to do something differently or work in a different way or more cost or whatever. And therefore,
Yeah, yeah,
I just don't think we're really helping with the way in which workplaces are seeing this, the way in which
yeah.
leaders are seeing, you know, those that are holding the money are kind of going, you know, that looks a bit difficult because that label means more money,
And there's
more
the
risk.
thing. I think you've just touched on the magical D word there, haven't you? Difficult.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, so by being badgered into a corner to saying it's because
yeah,
I'm neurodivergent, I've got ADHD, I've got autism. You've got what you want. I've done it. I've told you. Now you're gonna
yes,
mark me as difficult. Now you're gonna
yes,
pat me on the head and go, oh, this is
yeah,
Mike. He has autism.
exactly,
Whatever. I don't. That is
exactly.
not what anyone wants.
Exactly, but that is forever what will be the
That's
badge.
for real, right? That's
Yes,
that's that's for real.
that
That's what
is
happens.
100%. Which is why it was really interesting. We just published the latest neurodiversity index report. So this is
Yeah.
year 4, working
Which
with
we'll pop
City and
links to
Guild.
that in the show notes. Great shout out, great
Perfect.
plug there. We'll pop that in.
But what was really interesting in there was we asked, so we go to employers and employees to really find out what's going on in workplaces. And there was a great stat. Nearly 80% of leaders are saying, we have got it sorted. We've got this neurodiversity thing
We've
done.
cracked it.
We're good. Yeah, we got
Wow.
the badge. And then I think it was something like 38% of employees agreed, right? Which means that a lot more of them don't. So you've got leaders who are going, yeah, we've sussed it. We did the
Yeah.
training, we
Yeah.
had the awareness session. And then you've got
Yeah.
employees going, no, it doesn't feel
That's not how it
very
feels on the shop
neuroinclusive
floor.
round here. Absolutely. So there's a massive disconnect between what we think is going on within organizations and what's really going on for people and how they feel. So we've still
Yeah.
got a lot of work to do. And I think we're missing a trick. This is the thing, right? All the time we're talking about neurodiversity and we're talking about this condition, that condition. This is what they need. This is what we get for them. We're not talking about talent, all of us. How do we all, what's getting in the way of everyone being able to thrive within our business? So that's, going back to what I said at the beginning about sometimes I just wonder if we're helping sometimes with the conversation because
So
we
what
need
would
to
help then?
talk, just helping. So back to my lesson, right? This is neurodiversity. We all have a brain. Our brains are all different. The end. How can we help?
And next.
Exactly. That was your neurodiversity lesson. Finished.
That's it. Yeah, 101,
What's
one
going
slide,
on?
2 minutes, bang.
Right. So
So it's
what does that
moving on the
mean?
conversation, I think,
Moving on the
is what
conversation,
what
but
I'm saying.
also simplifying it. Let's
Yeah.
not get overcomplicated and let's not get too entrenched in what does this condition mean. A
No.
few weeks ago, someone came to me and said, right, Mel, I really struggle with getting myself organized. What's that? And I went, well, you struggle with getting yourself organized. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need to know which label to attach to that? That is the label. You're struggling to get yourself organized. What can you do? Tools exist to enable you to get yourself organized. And how can I help you to look at that? That's it. Doesn't
So it's
mean
person-centered.
exactly, and needs led. So, thinking about what do you person need in order to really thrive? Well, I prefer to have don't send me 3-page emails. Send me a video or give me, we've all got AI now, but I'm going to use Copilot to feed through the 3-page email that you sent me so that I can get a summary and it just pulls out what my actions are.
And it can do it, right? You can say to it, look,
Absolutely.
summarize this in a I've programmed mine to understand what neuroinclusion means now. So I can say to it, look, give me this in a neuroinclusive way. And it does.
Brilliant.
It summarizes it for me. It just gives me all in, white space, few bullets, blah, 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 blah. I get it. I don't need the detail. I just need the concept and I can get it.
Perfect. Those tools are built into most of the packages that we're using. So again, even more reason I don't have to tell you I've got it. I just need to know, do you use Copilot or can I have access to ChatGPT or whatever the AI tool of choice might be? Yeah, cool. Great, done. I don't need to say because, it's that's where my sort of thinking is going. Let's just not overcomplicate it.
So what's lighting you up then?
That really, yeah. You just reminded me a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with my then CPO, who said, "When you speak about neurodiversity, your face lights up." I was like, "I know, because I love it. I love talking about and what I love is helping people to understand what neurodiversity is." And what
drives
neurodiversity
that,
isn't.
What drives that? What drives that love and that passion? If you think, when we talked earlier about how before, obviously, you went through with your son and then you got diagnosis, and prior to that, to where you are now, what's changed? What's shifted? What's suddenly giving you this love and this passion and this drive that you didn't even know about, did you, beforehand?
No. Him, my son, at that time when he was 10, I was like,
Shout out
well,
to Mel's
hold on.
son.
Yeah, he's amazing. Let's come back to that in a second as well. But at that time when he was diagnosed, I was like, he's 10, right? I know as an HR professional that we're not ready for his brilliance. So, and then when I was learning more about neurodiversity, I was like, hold on, this is all of us. So as an
Mm.
HR profession, why aren't we talking about it? And that was really where I started sort of going along to CIPD groups and going, hello, I just know about this thing. Can I come and talk to you? And so I started talking to CIPD groups, to HR networks, and then people started to come to me, and it's really evolved from there. But I still absolutely love it. You know, last week in Neurodiversity Celebration Week, I went to a creative marketing agency and run a neurodiversity awareness session with them. And I always try to remember to do this. At the beginning, I asked them to think about where they are on a scale of 1 to 10 with their knowledge of neurodiversity. And then at the end, after an hour, I asked them to think about that number again and then raise their hand if that number's gone down. Thankfully, no one did. Raise your hand if it stayed the same. No one did. The whole room, there's about 30 of them in the room, put their hand up to say it had gone up. So even if I've nudged someone's knowledge a little bit, what that means is they can talk to others. And I always encourage them, talk to others, share what you've learned today, speak to others about the principles of neurodiversity, and then, and carry on, right? It's that pass it on type thing. So I think that has been really critical to thinking about that. So
I have this saying, Mel, I don't know if this
go on,
resonates, but
go for it.
nothing motivates like impact. And I
Mm,
think your story feels really relevant to
yeah,
that saying. It reinforces my belief that
yeah,
actually the greatest motivator is when something happens, when something impacts you, like you. And
yes,
that moment for me, that kind of feels like that was your sort of like your moment,
yeah,
that impact.
definitely.
Is that a
Yeah.
fair
Yeah, it
reflection?
is. It is absolutely. And I think, it's one of my specialisms right now with neurodiversity. The other one is employee relations. So, I can talk to you about disciplinaries, grievances, absence management, all of the fun stuff. But I know it. That's my
Mm,
thing. That
mm,
is my specialism. And
mm,
I think when you're good at something and you believe in something, then you can talk about it in a way that others want to listen and others can take something away from. And so actually being able to bring together employee relations and neurodiversity is just brilliant because, if you think about now, the number of employment tribunals shooting up with a neurodiversity consideration. Every HR professional I speak to says that they are seeing more grievances with a
mm.
neurodiversity consideration. They're seeing more performance management cases, conduct cases where neurodiversity is something that is relevant to the case. And I can help with those. I can help you to navigate that. I can help you to make sure that, I
You
was
don't
talking
get
about
that.
6 steps ahead in the employment tribunal. Have you done everything that you need to do? So let's start now making sure that it's documented. Make sure that you've used something like the Do It profiler to enable you to think about strengths, challenges,
We'll pop a
accommodations,
link to that in the show
adjustments
notes as well. Mel's
that
going to
might be
share all of these
useful.
links with me after the
Yeah,
show.
absolutely, absolutely. But so helping to navigate those things and just know this is my space. It's my space, and I feel
What's your
very
son's
comfortable
name,
in
by
it.
the way, Mel?
Toby,
Toby. So shout out to
yeah,
Toby, who's been
yeah.
instrumental
That's it.
in Mel's shift and lighting you up and helping
Yeah,
you want to make the change and make the difference.
yeah. And I said I'd go back to that because
You did, so let's
sometimes
go there.
when people go, how is your son now? And they do like this weird sort of tilt of the head thing, almost like,
Mm,
how is he? My God, my son is the most intelligent, articulate,
yeah,
funny,
yeah,
charismatic,
yeah,
switched on, informed, cleverest bloke. Now he's
yeah,
18, a man I
yeah,
know, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
because people hear the word, they make
yeah,
assumptions. It's like,
yeah.
no, 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 and that's what I mean about needs, right? That's why there are, of course, lots of people with autism who
Mm,
absolutely
mm,
need
mm-hmm,
specialist support. They have some people with the same diagnosis
mm,
are non-verbal,
mm-hmm,
not able to really navigate on a day-to-day basis,
mm,
etc.
mm, mm, mm.
And I feel like that's where we need to focus the support and the needs, and help people to be able to function properly. But actually, where people like my son, he's fine. Actually, that label does not adequately
To an
fit with
independent
him,
young man.
really. God, he's out working in a brilliant job, and he's brilliant.
He does get his amazing mum to make his dinner for him, though,
Yeah,
to
he
be
does.
fair, which I am only
Yeah,
slightly jealous about, to be
it's
fair.
funny. Yeah,
But
yeah, he does. And that's right. It's a
so we
privilege.
know
But
we
yeah.
know what lights you up then, Mel. I think we've kind
Yeah,
of got
that's
to the
it.
crux of that and where that came from. And I think there's
Yeah, yeah,
it'd be not unfair to say that I think a lot of people are motivated by trying to make a more positive difference
yes,
through their experiences and through the
yeah,
family, through the children or whatever. I think that kind of like starts that fire burning, doesn't it?
yeah,
And helps
absolutely.
drive that
Especially in the
forward.
neurodiversity space. I come
Yeah.
across people all the time who are like, oh, with my child's diagnosis or whatever, I decided to learn more about it. And I
Because we
think
see
it's
how crap
great.
a lot of things are, which
Yes,
we've talked about loads of different stuff in this show about how crap a lot of things are in
absolutely.
education, in the medical space, getting
Yes,
diagnoses in the workplace. There's
yes,
so much stuff that needs to change and be
yeah,
improved, right?
yes,
And that makes
yeah,
us want to get involved and make those changes and use whatever skills we've got.
yeah,
You've talked about all your HR skills and that, so you can use that to positively
yes,
influence and make a difference. Loads of other people have got loads of other
absolutely.
different skills and experiences where they can
Yeah.
do this. But I wonder, we've talked about quite a lot there about like your strengths and what lights you up and all this sort of. What really turns you off in this space then?
So, do you know what? I get really troubled by how unkind people can be to each other in this space.
Yeah.
Just like barging each other out of the way. Almost last week. So I did last week, Neurodiversity Celebration Week. I did loads of events through the week. And on one particular day, I did a webinar at lunchtime, which had over 550 people on there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. And I had a panel of people who I was chairing. So I'd invited this panel of people who were talking about their organizations and what they've done to be neuroinclusive. So they were sharing some examples of the things that they'd implemented that had made a difference for many, right? So it was just super helpful and practical. And then afterwards, I had an email from somebody that said, the panel didn't introduce themselves properly because it wasn't
Mm,
clear who on the panel was neurodivergent. And in Neurodiversity Celebration Week, I think it's really important that we definitely adhere to there's nothing about us without us as a principle.
gosh.
I know. But I do hear that quite a lot, almost like you can't talk about it if you're not it. You
Yeah.
can't care about being neurodivergent if you're not neurodivergent yourself. That kind
Yeah.
of, as if it's totally invalidating if
Yeah.
you don't have it, which is
Yeah.
why, and that's the thing, like I said, in this space, I feel like
Yeah.
we can be really unkind to each other and just wanting to,
Surely
you
there's
know,
more benefit in hearing many voices. I don't know. Just
absolutely.
thinking
And
out loud.
actually,
Do
there's
you
a
want to do
lot
a
to be said.
consultation and go out and just speak to two people, right? It's kind of
Right.
like, yeah, we need to hear a
Exactly.
wide range of voices in
Absolutely.
this to actually really understand what's
Yeah.
happening here and how
And
that
support
impact.
each other.
What are you going to lose if you don't hear
Exactly.
other people's voices and input? And it's not about us versus them
No,
ultimately,
it
which kind of
really
how that
shouldn't
comes
be.
across a little bit, to be honest. But
Yeah, it does.
you
It
know,
does. Which is really, yeah,
so a
it can
lack of
be a bit like
kindness
that.
is kind of is what turns you off then, and
Oh,
that
yeah,
applies
that
within our own
more
community
generally. Yes.
as well.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
can be quite could,
Yeah.
and for the benefit of those listening in who maybe not deeply entrenched in the neurodiversity community, it can
Yeah.
be quite a toxic place as well from the
Yeah.
neurodiversity
Yeah.
community. There's a lot of backbiting and a lot of
Absolutely.
arguing, and we don't all just get along with each other. Just to
No.
be clear on that, I think this is maybe a miss because all neurodivergent people just kind of like rub along nicely together. We really don't. We really don't.
Challenge each other along the way, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think, yeah, I would say that, like you said, a lack of kindness generally in the world. is what turns me off. I just, that's just not me. So I think there's enough space for all of us. And actually, it's really important that we listen to each other and hear others' points of view, and that broadens our sphere of understanding and thinking. And I think it's brilliant. And actually, one of the other things I did last week was a brilliant round table where there were lots of people from different organizations and different areas. And it just reminded me that sometimes I can sit in my own echo chamber,
That's a
so it's
great
good
way to
to get
summarize
out.
that.
Yeah, it's good to
Don't
get
let's
out and
not
hear from others.
what a way to kind of finish off the podcast as well. Don't sit in your own echo chamber. Wisdom.
Absolutely.
Mel, just
Mic drop.
drop in the wisdom. You saved that one. It was as if it was kind of like just timed. You planned that one out nicely, hadn't you?
You can clip that up,
But
Mike.
I said, didn't I, that if we're given the opportunity and the space, we'd
Yeah.
just go on and talk forever. But unfortunately, I just don't think our listeners would stay tuned in for like a 3 hour kind of deep dive into all of this, because it's just so much
No.
to unpack, isn't it? But just
Yeah.
hearing from you, I think, Mel, and thank you for coming on and for sharing your
You're so welcome.
story and your experience and your journey and what matters, what lights you up, what turns you off, all that kind of really rich, important conversation, I think and it shows that, underneath it all, we are humans.
Yeah.
We've all got needs,
That's it.
we've all got beliefs, we've all got
Yeah.
wants, we've all got things that make us light us
Yeah.
up, and we've all got things that turn us off. That's the beauty of it. And that
Yeah.
whole
We've all got a
working
brain.
together to get
Yeah.
things done. I
Yeah.
think that's
it.
probably one of the key messages. I think that's kind of come out as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And,
It's brilliant.
and stay true to your beliefs and your values. And yeah, absolutely, we've all
Yeah.
got a different way of doing things. And I
Yeah.
might rub up people myself the wrong way, but ultimately, we all, I think, fundamentally want to get to the same place, and we want to make
Yeah.
things, a better place for
Yeah.
all of us.
Absolutely.
Neurodivergent, neurotypical. It's all about creating a better space and a better place where we can all function, work, and live and coexist together, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. Yeah.
Sermon over. Kind of almost feel like I have to deliver a little bit of a sermon at the kind of the end of the cast. But yeah, any final words of wisdom or thoughts, Mel, that you might want to just share with our listeners tuning in?
Yeah. Just go back to what I said about we are all neurodiverse. We all have a brain, and our brains are all brilliantly unique. So think about, for you, what are the things that really set your world on fire, and how can you put those to best use in whatever it is that you're doing? And I think you can't go far wrong with that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
for being such a wonderful guest on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so delighted to be with you. So thanks, Mike.
I know it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? But we
I
got
know
there
it has.
in the end, and I've really
Hurrah.
enjoyed it. It's been a lovely
Me too.
conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
You too.